Greetings. Good Thursday evening, fellow freedmen,
Mhm.
reparationists, allies, and guests. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of the Religion and Reparations Elevation Power Hour, aka the Rare Power Hour, the most powerful hour on the web. This week, we are picking up where we left off during our inaugural May 12th show that pondered the question: what is the religious community's role in the U.S. reparations movement for American freedmen? Since Wikipedia touts that 83% of Black Americans identify as Christians, tonight we aim to chop it up and ask Christians specifically our bold, blunt, pointed question: where is Justice Jesus? And if you joined us last episode, you know this is part two of that fiery conversation. Did you know that almost all Black Americans not only believe in God or higher power, but research has shown that Black Americans are also more religious than the U.S. public overall? Check out this graphic, family. In 2020, Pew Research reveals that 95% of all Black American adults believe in a greater power than themselves. Here's another graphic from that same Pew Research: 97% of Black Americans versus all U.S. adults at 90% believe in God or a higher power. A higher power. Just oppose that to the freedman condition in America for the past 400 and plus years. We are at the bottom of almost every leading indicator of wealth, progress, health, and overall quality of life, while, of course, leading most indicators of personal and community wide detriment and poverty. We know this isn't all of us, but it's definitely most of us. And that's where we're focusing our attentions and efforts tonight. Family, we are here to ponder the question: where is the God of our salvation? Specifically, the church, the mosque, the synagogue, and the temple. Are they using their social capacity and influence within the framework of our 21st century struggle? I'm thinking since we're asking this question, we're not seeing them show up. In the context of where is Justice Jesus and the political realities that come along with it, we thought it would be prudent to have a political minded, hopeful, reparationist congressional candidate share his religious affiliations, if any, and how it would or wouldn't affect his term should he prevail as the winner. Gregg Marcel Dixon, political candidate running for the 6th Congressional District of South Carolina, just informed us prior to airing that something has come up and he must reschedule. That's right, family. Freedman life has happened again, and he wants to reschedule his appearance as soon as possible. But we give Marcel our prayers, love, and light as you navigate your latest challenge, brother. And we look forward to speaking with you at a later date. But first, if you are active in the reparations movement or joined us for our initial episode of Rare, our co-host panel needs no introduction, and you will find that out soon enough. Hailing from the Shy, this Windy City brother, Arthur Ward is an activist, a reparationist, and an avid researcher that has unearthed the 1963 pamphlet written by Queen Mother Audley A. Moore, who was at the time the president and founder of the Reparations Committee for the Descendants of American Slaves. Fam, if you've never heard of our dear ancestor, please Google her as soon as possible when we're finished with this podcast. This pivotal pamphlet that Mother Moore wrote made the case in clear, concise, no uncertain terms that reparations are owed directly to American freedmen, not the blacks, the original builders of the country, the American freedmen, that were never paid, but on the contrary, persecuted. Rounding out our co-host panel is Derrick Williams. Derrick is also an activist and advocate for American freedmen reparations. He's a former member of the Prince George's County NAACP, a current member of the DMV Freedmen, and established here in the greater Washington, D.C. area. I'm Kelly Matthews. I'm a mother, grandmother, activist, accountant, and advocate for reparations until we achieve that goal. With that, I turn the mic and the stage over to Derrick. Greetings, Derrick.
Greetings, fam. Greetings, everybody. And thank you for that introduction. So, as we were discussing the article from AP News, which is surrounded around the U.S. Black population and religion, and Black Americans are highly religious, the most religious group in the country amongst all groups. The article also mentions that we pray the most, also as well, which is right in line there. We were having a discussion earlier, and we were talking about this article. And the funny thing is that people are looking at diversifying the Black church. There is some talk with regards to the church, some of its characters, or most likely probably its traditions, being done away with and being developed new. Ironically, the same group of people who were in this survey, it's close to 8,700 people, Black Americans. It's the largest survey that the Pew Research Center has done on this topic. More than 2/3, or the overwhelming majority of them, recognize that the Black church has actually been fundamental in social justice and equality for Black Americans. So, in my opinion, even though I recognize the issues that are going on with the church, at least some of them, and around the church, at this point, I feel as though the church needs to be directly involved with the reparations movement. And it sounds as though, at least in the minds of people from a historical perspective, they would probably agree with that. Now, they're not here to speak for themselves, but based on what the Pew Research article actually was speaking on. But I'd like to go back to the discussion that we were having on the last episode with regards to religion, regards to fundamentalism versus a more liberal approach. And I'm actually a proponent or an advocate for a more liberal approach, because I think that there are issues when you take a more fundamentalist approach with regards to topics like reparations and equality or equity, social justice, and those types of things. So what do you think about that, Arthur?
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say you wanted to do, you want to get good at algebra, right? Okay. And getting good at algebra means that you have a fundamental understanding of math or arithmetic, right? So if there's something wrong with the fundamentals, then you will not have a good outcome when you go to more esoteric things like algebra, calculus, trigonometry, and so forth. The fact that we have to get away from the fundamentalists or the fundamentalism of the Bible means that there's something wrong that's fundamentally wrong in the first place, because the fact that you're getting away from it means that it's not usable. So it's like, it kind of gives me a headache about Black people with this religion stuff. It really has no operational place in where we need to go and what we need to do in a capitalistic society like the United States. We are, and as this survey shows, that we're at the bottom of all things that count for a good life in this country. But at the same time, we are the most religious. We are supposedly the most connected with the higher power and that higher power being something that is all powerful and all knowing. Well, if it's all knowing, then it surely knows what our condition is. And if it's all powerful, it's surely not using enough of its power, its all powerfulness, to get us out of the condition that we're in. And I cannot go with the God of the oppressed idea, because if we have a God of the oppressed, that means that God is not doing anything for us, and we're praying for nothing. So I really don't think that it has a place in terms of our improvement. If we have to spend energy on that to improve its approach to make it more liberal, then that same energy can be used to figure out ways to build Black business, to recapture Black communities, to get better control of our politics, to improve our education system, and also improve our educational attitudes as far as improving the training and understanding of our children. So I'm not sure if that's good energy and time to be spent in terms of reforming how the church does business.
Let me speak to that real quick. Okay, so I definitely understand where you're coming from,
Yeah.
at least how you explain it. With regards to fundamentalism and liberalism in the church, it's already there.
Yeah.
Right. So you wouldn't have to really you wouldn't have to totally create the wheel over. People are already taking this approach, and the approach is more common outside of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of it has to do with the culture in the United States, particularly places like the Bible Belt, where traditions that have been around for a long time, they either remain the same or they kind of come. It's kind of the same tradition with a new shell on the top, right?
Okay.
But I, in my opinion, I think it's more powerful if everything about the Bible is not literal. When people understand that, they understand that there's certain aspects about the Bible that were not meant to be written literally, right? And other aspects were. So I think that is something that can be worked around, just because I already think that it's being done, right? What I do think, you may take issue with this. What I do think is specifically for the Black churches, there needs to be a form of reformation. In other words, the theology needs to be redirected and centered around the people. Because I think that one of the core issues that the Black church is dealing with is, how do you worship a God that's universal, that's created all human beings? But how do you still have a God that is your God, right? That recognizes this existential circumstance, or as you said, God of the oppressed circumstance that you're in. I think that is probably, I think that's the direction that it needs to go in. I feel like at this point, a lot of our traditions don't really steep in the history of our people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at Israel, that's exactly what they did, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that this is, it's a unique situation. It's not exactly the same, but I think there's a place for that, being that we created a form of Christianity in this country, even
Mm-hmm.
though it wasn't the original religion of our ancestors, but we created a form here. And even James Baldwin has said, and this may be debatable, but what we did with Jesus wasn't supposed to be done, right? So when I think about that, and I think about also how religions develop over time, and the fact that me and you have both had this conversation, one point we definitely agree on is that a religion should benefit a group of people, right? It shouldn't just be a thing where it just benefit the individual believer through their personal relationship, but you should also be able to see the benefits of a religion that a collective group embraces, right? Reflected on the collective group, which is going to the core of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So,
but
where I'm at with it, and let me just close it out here. Where I'm at with it is, how do we get people to utilize their faith to mobilize what they believe, what they view, what they understand as the works of God? See, that's where I'm at, right? How can we meet people where they're at so that they can understand that from their point of view, this is in fact God's will. Of course, you gotta move your feet, right? You've got to do something. But that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. What
No,
do you think about that?
I don't believe in keeping people in a bad spot. I think that the conditions that we are under in the United States takes a total reformation of thought in terms of how we are operating as Black people. I don't believe in sticking with traditions at all, because my question is, whenever you bring me a tradition, my first thing is like, I'm going to ask 3 questions about a tradition. Why did it originate? Why did it persist? And is it useful right now?
Mm-hmm.
And that third part, if it's not answered properly, then that means that particular tradition needs to be discarded because it's getting in the way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and for so long, we've had this Christianity as our, how should I say, operating system. Any philosophy or religion that you call yourself believing in or operating as a reference point for your life is your operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been shown, especially in the past 200 years, this has been a very bad and disempowering operating system for us. I do not think that we should formally engage churches or even invite pastors into this advocacy. I do believe, though, that we should be concentrating on individual believers outside of the church, because just like, believers engage their jobs, just like believers engage their accountants, all the other things that they engage with our religion. And I do think that we need to start presenting a viewpoint where religion is not necessary for us to move forward as a people, because religion has not proven itself to be a help in terms of moving us forward. And at this point, we are in an emergency as a people. Jesus is not coming through for us, and that is obvious.
I would just go back.
I want
sorry,
to jump in on this and first say to our audience, we have Arthur here. He is our resident atheist and agnostic co-host. And we invited him because we want this spectrum of thought. We want this rigor of going forward in this space. As a Christian, what Arthur says doesn't make me angry at all. That is his position. And he's going based on facts and figures and what the results are today. I can say that my introduction to Christianity, as a little girl to now, listening to, Arthur and our other co-host Cynthia McDonald speak, is one of ignorance is bliss. I don't put my stock into letter and verse of the Bible. I see it as a roadmap. I see it as a key to unlock my inner God. I see it as permission to use the talents and energies and efforts that God gave me to put forth to society for the greater good. I use it to empower me to keep going forth when the world tells me no. If I just operated in the flesh, I would think it was just Kelly out here moving. But when I'm moving, I think God is with me always. And knowing that piece of it, my parents and my grandparents who have went on to glory, I feel like they're with me. So even as an only child, I feel like I still have my parents and my grandparents in my sphere, in my spirit, and in my efforts. So Christianity gives me the permission to believe the impossible, and has also given me the permission to go forth in that effort and to do things that I have been told no. And in the flesh, I would have taken no. But when I think I'm on a mission for God, if you remember the Blues Brothers, Mr. Chicago, James, Jake, and
Belushi.
Mm-hmm.
Belushi, they were on a mission from God. They just got fresh out of jail, Jim Belushi, and the nun told them to go out and make it happen. And when they felt they was on a mission for God, they didn't care if the entire Chicago police followed them through the mall, which is what happened in that movie, that they were going to get the money to the court to save the church. So that's the kind of effort. Now, does God exist? I guess we'll find out when we take the dirt nap. But but on this side of heaven, we need permission to unlock our strength. I think, especially as Black people.
I don't think we need permission for that. You decide that on your own.
I say we need permission because when we out here in the street, loud, bold fellow freedmen get kowtowed when white folks come around. When it's time to speak up and have all that fire energy that we have for each other, when it's time to put Karen in her place, they find respect. They find the words to say. They get, a little downtrodden.
And as an atheist, I reside strongly within my personhood, and I find the same fire. If anybody has spent any time around me, especially with the way that I deal with white people, especially, it is because of the fact I believe that I don't have that shadow of white Jesus in the back of my mind, mitigating what I might say or do to someone that disrespects me either verbally or physically. I just don't have that. But at the same time, I feel that because of the fact that my mind is clear of metaphysics or even the idea that a God exists or Jesus is guiding me, I am free to reside and tap into my full personhood as I am. And I believe that ever since that I let God go, I experienced the kind of freedom and understanding and clarity around me that I don't think that religious people have.
Well, I'll jump in and respond to you and answer a question in the chat. What verses empower you? I was asked personally, and I think they mean what scriptures maybe. I'm gonna take up one that the panel said was a problem last episode, and that's Matthew 7:7. I call it the ask version. Ask, seek, knock. Why do I love that? First of all, my last name is Matthew, so Matthew is kind of my chapter. Second of all, I had the opportunity, the good fortune to meet our ancestor Dorothy Height back in the 90s. She used to host a 100-woman tea around Christmas time every year. And at that time, I was fresh out of college. And I'm not a Delta. I'm not a D9 at all. And I got a ticket to go to this because of a upper class AKA person I met, go all the time, didn't want to go. It was boring to her. She gave me the ticket. I went there in my little purple coat, and everybody in there had on their furs, and I was totally out, and they were older. I looked out of place. Sister Dorothy came in. They sat her in the wingback chair. She pointed me out, probably because I had that purple coat on. Everybody had on a fur.
No fur.
She said, bring that baby over here. I was talking to Dr. Height at 24 years old. And she told me the story of how she was able to get the headquarters for the National Council of Negro Women. She got it from Sears and Roebuck for $1. Well, how did she get it for $1? Because they were going to sell the building, and they were allowing her group to rent out space there. So they sold that, but they didn't want to sell it out from up under the Dorothy Heights. So they gave her the first rights of refusal to purchase.
Sure.
She told them she wanted it for $1. And not only that, she told them she wanted everything in the building. She told them she wanted the artwork, they wanted the wood furniture, all that was antique. We couldn't afford the stuff in the building, much less the building. Do you know Sears and Roebuck gave that to Dorothy Height? And what she said to me, she said, I'm telling you this as a young sister. You have not because you ask not. As a young sister, you need to go forth and ask. And if that person tells you no, that's that person. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. So I attribute Matthew 7:7 to, and she told me a whole lot of other pearls of wisdom. But I attribute that to our ancestor Dorothy Height, that also used to host the Black family reunion on the mall every September. That has gone away.
But you know what, Kelly, now, and I do appreciate everything that you just said. But at the same time, let's broaden this a little bit. This is not to say that people of other faiths have not experienced the same type of principle. I have, and I'm an atheist. And I do ask, okay, so that principle, even though it is enshrined in the Bible, that is something that whoever wrote the Bible took from observing life. And that is a beautiful passage. And I think me and Derrick has talked about this before too, that there are many beautiful passages in the Bible, and they're very useful when they're taken out of context, just like you have. But then on the other hand, let's handle a passage like this. 1 Pt.2, 18-21. Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. For it is commendable if someone bears under the pain of unjust suffering because they are conscious of God. But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you still endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you were called because Christ suffered on the cross for you, leaving you as an example that you should follow in his steps. How do we as Black people in this country, after what we've been through, handle that?
I can answer that.
Sure.
One is, I believe you don't just stick only to the New Testament, but that'll be a whole nother conversation. And the reason is because there are already other things that are fundamental that for lack of a better,
that's the New Testament.
I know, that's what I was saying, that you need to also resort to the Old Testament, because you actually find more of the atonement aspect and the aspect of reparations or repair in the Old Testament. It is there in the New Testament, but the New Testament mostly focuses on the salvation and Jesus actually being the atonement. The basic definition between reparations and atonement is primarily payment versus atoning for a repair, right? Based on a damaged relationship. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that is tied to the aspect of atoning and sacrificing. And of course, Jesus is looked at as an atonement from the Christian perspective.
Sure.
But that's only one take. So you have that, and then you have, starting in Exodus, you have 12:35, where essentially Yahweh is telling the Israelites, he tells Moses to tell the Israelites to go to the Egyptians and ask for gold or silver before they leave, right? And that both the sons and the daughters should essentially be wearing the gold earrings and the silver and that type of thing. And apparently by the scripture, the Egyptians willingly gave up the gold and the silver, right? Now, this is important because when you have persons like John MacArthur who are staunchly against social advocacy in the church, unless they kind of create it, what they'll make an argument about is that Jesus didn't actually come for that type of restoration, right? Okay, that is one argument. But at the end of the day, you have to also think about it too, that type of restoration, one, even in the Christian tradition, God doesn't change his word. So you can't just eliminate those things just because you're 1,000 years in the future or you're in the New Testament. Okay. But secondly, the thing is, one aspect about it is that Jesus is bringing salvation. He's saving the soul. Another aspect about that is that you really can't have a Black Christianity without there being a social justice and a movement. That's the facts. So while I understand what John MacArthur is saying from a biblical point of view, from the scriptures, a take on that, he's totally Xing out the fact that you have a group of people that are in the tens of millions, that social justice is directly tied into their form of Christianity. Matter of fact, our Christianity wouldn't exist if it didn't exist. So even when you understand that the protest that happened in the early 1700s, right, 1790, right, for the AME church that forms in 1813 or 1810, for that to even happen means that you have to have an aspect of social justice in there that probably goes against the stance that John MacArthur is taking.
Well, not
So-
exactly. I mean, the Bible. I mean, when you really look at the Bible,
Mhm.
it really doesn't cover social justice no, it doesn't. It doesn't really deal with social justice. Actually, the idea of social justice was actually something that was created in America initially by the Quakers. You also have to remember during that time that you had some Quakers that were for the emancipation of blacks out of slavery, and some Quakers that took a more literal reading of the Bible that were against it. You also have to understand that the Bible does not release people from slavery. Matter of fact, if you really look at the Old Testament, between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Old Testament gives rules for slave masters, and the New Testament gives rules for how slaves should behave. But there are no scriptures available in there that talk about emancipation or a degree of social justice. And the incident that you just talked about with the
That's not
Israelites,
true.
wait a minute, let me finish.
Pardon me.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
And the incident that you talked about was really just a matter of just not really atonement, but just payment in fear, because the Egyptians had already experienced the power of Israel's God, and they didn't want another hit, and that's why Pharaoh gave up the money. So, we do have to look at those stories in context, and without adding our own ideas as far as what we think happened.
But
Okay.
Arthur, if you had flies and frogs and the plague and all that come on you, wouldn't you have a change of heart? I mean,
I'd give up the money too. Get out of here.
Reparations is a theological concept.
It is.
It's a
really
theological term for atonement. The word itself is lifted right out of theology, not any place else. They may not have called what that is social justice when they did that releasement and let our people go. But the minute they was gone, Pharaoh came to himself like, oh, wait a minute. What happened? He sent them soldiers after them.
Now,
see, it doesn't really matter why he did it, because I mean, reparations has been paid to people that have had pressure on them before too.
Sure.
So it doesn't. The idea that they had 9 plagues, it doesn't really matter why. The story actually encapsulates that, and you don't have to stretch that to understand that. I also would like to say this. It's not totally accurate that the Old Testament does not speak on slavery. In fact, it does, and I have some issues with it.
I said it does speak on slavery. It speaks on how slave masters should operate, and the New Testament talks about how slaves should behave, just like the passage that I just recited from 1 Peter.
Correct. From a property perspective, that's correct. It's written as law. Right. However, it states that slave masters must let their slaves go after 7 years. So there's
what kind of slaves we talking about? We're not talking about. We're talking about slaves that were enslaved within the tribe. Those are the slaves. Those are the slaves that were let go after 7 years. But the ones outside the tribe, remember, after the 10 Commandments were laid down on the Israelites, okay, then he said, you can go outside of your village, take over other villages, destroy them, and any slaves that you extract from those endeavors, you may keep them in perpetuity forever. And their children.
Leviticus 25:45.
Exactly.
Right. But it's kind of, I was going to get into that, but you jumped ahead. What I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, your statement is that there was no criteria with regards to slavery in the Bible. if I'm understood you correctly.
Yeah, the criteria for slavery in the Bible is mostly
For
regarding rules
Israelites. It's for
for
Israelites.
Israelites only.
Because
Right.
the law is written for Israel.
Right.
That's why. But at the end of the day, they still have a criteria with regards to slavery based on their law. See, no other group of people are forced to follow their law.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, that it's not taught that way because Christians inherit essentially the covenants of Israel. I won't say the law, but the covenants through the blood of Christ.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if you as a Moabite, you don't have to follow these laws.
Sure.
Yahweh's laws do not apply to you. And that's why they're able to do that at the end of the day. But being that we're in a context of the Judeo-Christian context, you can use this argument against persons who recognize Yahweh as God.
Sure.
So that's what I'm trying to say is the other thing too is why this is important that we had this conversation. And I love having this conversation with you because you have enough information and give enough pushback that it really creates an environment of critical thinking. But the other important aspect about this is that Christians are going to have pushback by other Christians and other people about reparations. So to keep reparations outside of the church is not only doing us a disservice outside of the church, but the people who actively go to church, it's also doing them a disservice. They are unable to fully defend their position from a position of God or of the God of their understanding without giving them some ammunition of how that ties into their theology.
I understand. It's a damn shame. I mean, and I get where you're coming from as far as like involving the church, because that's from a practical standpoint, that's where a lot of our people are on certain days. So you got them all right there and explain to them where we need to go. But at the same time, we do have to cherry pick what churches and what pastors, because some pastors understand that the accomplishment of reparations might be bad for business.
And see, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this again, but I want you to.
Not if everybody tithes off them. You're not thinking about this correctly.
Yes, I am.
Arthur, I would say this: that Arthur has a unique take, and I think that he's aware of information that a lot of us aren't with regards to the politics of how some of the church's interactions go, which I think will be beneficial to us moving forward. You know, for us to strategize and, like you said, basically pull together. So yeah, but I do agree that I think that there are also benefits. This is a pro and con thing. It's not all pros or all cons. There are benefits behind the church being involved in reparations, and there may be, for certain people or certain fractions, there may be lack thereof also as well. We'll discuss that again.
Right. I got a book here. A book here is actually written by a Black pastor as to why reparations is unbiblical. And I personally know two pastors right here in Chicago, Black pastors that are against reparations.
Yes.
Well, tell Reverend Herschel Walker that we're not interested in his pulpit.
Right.
There's I can't think of their names right now, but there are two evangelical pastors who they're also against reparations. They're against social justice with regards to the church, period. So to me, that's kind of all in line. And what their argument is that it's not in line with scripture. To me, I find that problematic because when I'm looking on the screen and I'm looking at two African-American men, which I'm going to assume, I'm pretty sure, but I'm going to assume that they're descendants of persons subjected to chattel slavery. They probably have a better understanding than I do on how the Black church developed in this country and how you can cut out the social justice or the fight for justice aspect when that's exactly how we came to be. It doesn't make sense to me at the end of the day. It doesn't make sense to me how you can fight reparations. To me, that's like fighting the establishment of the AME church or having its own power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Its own say so. To me, it's
Right.
like the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because how would you justify that then?
Right.
The
We
scriptures didn't change.
No, they
I
don't.
think in their mind, they feel like render Caesar what is Caesar's, and leave the God stuff to God, and they want a clear delineation of that because they don't want to ruffle any feathers in the political community. I remember when George Bush was president, his passionate conservatism had a lot of political money for mega churches, doing a lot of things at the time in the 90s.
Right.
You couldn't find a black preacher to say
Mhm.
anything bad about
Mhm.
George Herbert Walker Bush. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they were on the dole. So you can't think that everything they're saying is coming from biblical perspective or scripture or spiritual perspective. They're still there's still flesh wrapped up in that, and their goal is to keep people in a situation as docile. If you go out here and find your voice, if you go out here and get what's owed to you, and you're coming to church not because you're downtrodden, not because you need uplift, but you coming because you want to be there. You're coming because you are finding edification there. And if you got a pocket full of money, I could see pastors thinking, I don't need church no more. So that means you haven't been teaching too well, because they should see if they are dyed in the wool and baptized in the spirit, that they should know that they need that for their daily bread. But whether they have a pocket full of money or not. But I don't see how pastors can downplay their role in social justice, especially after seeing that if it wasn't for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, I don't know if we would have been able to move that ball over the goal line in the 60s, with the president that was calling us the N-word every other heartbeat, but
Uh-huh.
signing legislation on our behalf.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not,
I
it's
agree.
not, isn't that incredible how you can be called a nigger and a Christian at the same time? Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
That's the
And
reality of living in a Christian country for black people. You know, and see the other
sex.
thing that I'm pointing at you, Kelly. See, this is the other thing too. Uh, we are we are churchgoers. We have these pastors who supposedly have this connection with with an all powerful being. But when it comes to our quality of life in the here and now, as we worship, as we tithe, as we attend these houses of worship and edify and support the pastor, we are at the bottom of everything. If we have this kind
Mhm.
of connection, there is no excuse for it. And if you look in the Bible, but I'm looking for some real all powerful proactivity, because when God really wants to do something, according to the Bible, he does it. I'll give you 5 examples. First example, he creates a whole universe in 6 days. That's Genesis 1, 1, 2, and 3. Second, when Adam and Eve fucked up, heaven quickly issued the world's first eviction notice. Get out now. They didn't even have time to pack. That's Genesis 3:22 to 24. Third example, when God's chosen people were getting the hell out of Dodge, also known as Egypt, no time wasted, no hesitation. Dude parted the Red Sea in 7 seconds flat. That's Exodus 13:17 to 14:29. The Tower of Babel, not happening, people. Squash that shit in 3 seconds. That's Genesis 11:1 through 9. Fifth example, releasing American Christian niggers out of Christian slavery. Hold on. Let me think about this. In the meantime, I can put you niggas on this 400-year waiting list, okay? No scripture for this shit. 0, 0, 0. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, but let me say,
my pushback to that, Arthur, is
Yeah.
it hasn't been a whole. If you taking it for the 400 years, you're including slavery.
Yeah.
So you're discounting us getting out of slavery.
right.
You're discounting all the efforts that got us to the civil rights movement. And I feel like, and not to drag my parents' generations, the boomers.
Yeah.
But once that civil rights legislation was passed, Black folks thought we was done.
Yeah, but at the same time, Kelly, this dude, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever y'all call him, whatever your flavor is, everything that he did was in 6 days or less stuff that he really wanted to get done, including creating an entire universe. Now, if he can include an entire universe in 6 days, then what is the problem with this 400-year drag that we had to go through while worshiping this same guy that we're still suffering with today?
Israel went through it too. Remember, before he took the 7 seconds to part the Red Sea, he let them sit for 400.
Yeah, but
then they sat for another 40.
We're not Israel. We're American freedmen. We are not Israel.
Right. I was responding back to one of your examples that you gave,
sure.
where so, but I was just saying that it's the same God, right? That aspect about it is similar with regards to that. So, and I think that's why a lot of our ancestors were drawn to the stories in the Bible, is because they could see comparatives there. But I wanted to say there are other reparations in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Okay. So even with, I'm trying to think if it's not Nebuchadnezzar, but it's a foreign king. A foreign king. I want to say he's Babylonian, but I may be not correct. I can't see my notes, some of my notes right now that I left also in my device. But he paid tribute to Israel. And I believe it is Nebuchadnezzar, because I think it's the Babylonian captivity where they were basically pushed out and brought back in.
That was Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar, yeah. Right. So they were given reparations by him, and he's not an Israelite. Think about that. He's in a position where he doesn't probably have to give them reparations, but it probably is also a good political move too.
See, right? Yeah.
So
I understand.
So they take the Israelites over through captivity. They siege them, which means there's pillage, there's rape, there's death, right? And as the story moves on, they're given repair. They're given reparations.
Yeah, but look,
I think what I was saying is that reparations, in fact, is biblical. Now, I do understand the argument with regards to people saying, like I said earlier, the New Testament. As an example, John MacArthur, one of his issues with the whole social justice thing was that, or reparations, that he felt as though it was forced. That in the story with Egypt, they gave it up willingly. Okay, so these are the arguments that they're making to say that at the end of the day, we're basically putting the press on them to put them in a chokehold to give up what they owe. Pardon me. But the reality is if they are believers in Yahweh and they revere these scriptures, they should be following the same actions.
All right, but
okay, so.
But as we know, white folks got a different view of scriptures than we do.
So do some black folks.
Yeah.
Because the reason is because they're taking that literal, right? And many of the black folks aren't factoring in the historical aspect of our group.
I understand.
And to me, that's the fundamental problem in the black church is that's like telling the story about Israel or Jews basically having a culture that's surrounded around their theology. But you're going to take the Jewish or the Israel part out. We're going to take out the part of our story, but then we just going to have Yahweh. That doesn't make any sense.
All right.
So to me.
But at the same time, now you do remember that we were not Christians when we were brought here, right?
I do. But we converted.
Okay.
So, and when we converted, part of that story of our conversion is the establishment of the AME. right? Which is a social justice
That's
move.
correct.
Which is a social justice move. So for other folks, if they want to say that the Bible or the scriptures aren't tied to social justice for them, be my guest, right? But you're going to have a hard time arguing this soundly with a person who understands our history and then decides to tie in the theological history or the development of that too. So that's why I said it's important for us to focus on us. Because if we take it from the perspective of just being general Christians, then those arguments hold weight. But what I'm trying to say is that the pushback in that argument is, okay, you're saying at the end of the day that the Bible doesn't deal with social justice. Then how did we become Christians? And how do we have our own denominations then? See, you can't have those stories with we can't get there without social justice.
I understand that, but again, social justice is not biblical. But I do give Christians credit for their tremendous reserves of creativity that they come up with. They come up with all kinds of stuff: liberation theology, Ku Klux Klan theology, manifest destiny, all the stuff that we come up with in terms of better marketing of the Christian viewpoint, whatever that might be, because nobody really knows what it is. Nobody really preaches from the Bible. When you see these preachers in these pulpits, they are preaching their particular viewpoints,
right?
Not biblical stuff. They're preaching in some cases political viewpoints couched in scriptural language.
Agreed.
That's what I hear.
Agreed. And when you read the Bible, it's political.
I'm an atheist that I don't sometimes tune in to Christian cable networks just to see what the opposition is doing right now. So.
Sure. I don't disagree with any of that. Yeah. There's no religion out here that's a monolith in the sense of interpretation, or in the sense of sect. Yeah. So I totally agree with that. At the end of the day, it's supposed to apply to people's lives. So I don't have a problem with people drawing from the scriptures what is necessary for them. Yeah. In other words, if people utilize the scriptures for faith to keep them going in life, I have no problem with that. I would actually prefer that than have people who don't have anything to live for, or at least believe that in their approach, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, again, it's not for me to say how other people see their mortality and their relationship with the God or the being of their understanding. Mm-hmm. What I do think that I can assist in is essentially lining up reparations with their theology. And I don't think that's a far stretch. I have heard the detractors, the pushbackers that say that Christianity isn't social justice. I mean, they really haven't studied us as a people. They could not have said that. Or they're not considering our version Christianity.
If we create a strategy for that, I mean, I know the Bible well enough so that I could dig up scriptures that could possibly be used for that purpose, if that is what we need to do. Okay. But again, I speak in the way that I do because you're my team. The American descendants of freedmen are my team. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is all I got to work with. So if this is all I got to work with, then I'm going to give them the best of what I know, the best of what I perceive, so that we can be as clear-minded as possible, so that we can proceed forward in terms of improving our lives in the here and now. But so far, I have not seen anywhere in our history where this has served us. I mean, okay, let's see. First Black captives landed in the Americas in 1562 on the good ship Jesus. Then Abraham Lincoln did us with a fucking Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. That's 331 years right now. So
Mhm.
then let us add in another 130 years of legal post-slavery bullshit. Now, this is a Christian country now. Now,
Mhm.
from that, we can clearly see that this merciful God keeps the well-being of Black people securely in mind as an urgent priority. Now, we can see that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Mere seconds or days in
Mhm.
response or proaction for everything and everybody else, as you see in the Bible. But several hundred years before the most pious, faithful, enthusiastic Christians on earth, Native Black Americans, could even receive anything resembling partial relief for our suffering. And
Mhm.
we niggers are still waiting for the rest of the package from an all-powerful God. Now, even if God were conclusively proven to exist, that would be all the more reason for me to look up and give him a solid finger. Then I could finish my ice cream. You know what I mean?
I
But
understand. I understand. But let me
but
ask you this,
no, I
let,
because
can't.
let me jump. I want to jump in a second
sure.
and just say to Arthur, I don't want you to think that I'm thinking or I'm saying that religion is a panacea at all.
Okay.
I'm saying that for me, God is the panacea.
Mm.
And if I believe the scriptures, I am a God
Mhm.
here on earth, and God has given me free will.
Okay.
Now, with all the talents and resources I've been given, within my free will, what am
Mhm.
I doing with that for my people? I
Right.
know
There
a
you
lot of
go.
talented people that ain't doing nothing
Mhm. Right.
for nobody, and they
Mhm.
love the Lord, but they're not putting they're not
Yeah.
putting those talents and resources on the line to move this movement forward. And
Right.
so we keep talking and having God be the heavy for us
Right.
not getting out of our comfort zone or getting out of our I don't know, fear of attacking and approaching our own problems in a political way.
Mhm.
But I don't think that's the fault of God. If we are many gods on earth with our free will, and if we have everything we need, and I believe we do, because if we didn't, we still be enslaved. We
Mhm.
had everything we needed then. We have everything we need now. But until we put it all together as a collective unit and approach our government with some demands in the proper way, then we're just going to go back and forth and blame it on God, blame it on
Yeah.
Pookie, blame
Yeah.
it on, the weather.
Right.
As we spend all our energy on the NBA finals versus, I mean, we got all kinds of energy for that.
Right.
But who was up at 7:00 at night talking about religious and reparations?
Right. Mhm.
What 10 people?
Right.
Even as we see AB 31 moving forward, we're not even collectively even informed about that as
Mhm.
freedmen.
Oh,
Right.
Marcel should have at least $3 million in his war chest.
Yeah.
But we giving it to this fucking pastor over here so that he can buy another purple suit and get his Bentley tuned
Chicago.
up. You understand?
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, that's not all pastors.
But
I think that the worst of any group is always the stereotype, and that's the one we want to
They're the
drag.
worst group.
But that is not I don't believe that.
hey, but
That's the
Arthur, I'm gonna tell you
majority
this
of
though.
pastors.
I'm gonna tell you this though, Arthur.
But
We definitely we got some pastors on our side. Like
okay.
we know that for a fact. Even with regards to Rare and by the people, we have some pastors supporting us. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I think
Yeah, we got a pastor in Congress right now, a Black pastor from Georgia who doesn't even want to talk about reparations.
right, who's a Black liberation theologist.
Yeah, that motherfucker.
A comfortable Black pastor that want to
Yeah,
stay
Right.
comfortable.
yeah.
Who is the protege of James Cone?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
And
right.
then you got an atheist like me. If you want to say I have a God, my God is you guys.
Okay.
You understand? And
Our focus.
my worship comes in the form of me trying to get this bag for us.
Our focus needs to be, how can we bring people in to reparations where they're at?
No, I have no problem with that.
And our point,
including the church.
Arthur, for even having this platform,
Yeah.
if 97% of freedmen believe in God and a higher power, and 90% of America does too, we'd be a fool not to engage that community, whether we believe them or not, whether we agreed or not.
You gotta understand, I know these people well. I engage with them all the time because I'm talking about reparations. I just don't talk about religion in those spaces. But that's where the people are. And a lot of people in when we were first ADOS Chicago came from those spaces. We even were utilizing a church one time for a while for meetings. So no, I can't get away from it. But when you bring me on a platform like this, I'm going to talk my mind.
No, yeah, we don't want you not to. We're just at the end of the day, the goal for us, of course, is reparations and to try to bring the religious community in. So yeah, we don't want you not to.
Yeah,
talk your mind.
Yeah,
So, fam, as the referee here, we are 5 minutes past passing the plate and altar call and the benediction. We are slated for an hour. We want to, I think that our executive producer, Natalie, was playing the music for us to wrap up, but we thought it was time for the choir to come and give us a rendition, and we just started back up. But I do want to say that we have some powerful preachers coming on that I am looking forward to this dialogue with Arthur Ward. I do want to say a shout out to Cynthia McDonald. She's our other co-host.
Shout out, Cynthia.
Other business to deal with tonight, but we are looking forward to that sister being on the panel and bringing people from all walks of life, from all perspectives, with all voices to this table, because it's going to take every hand, everybody, to make this change. And as we go and go off to our prospective places, I want to say, no matter what your religious affiliation you subscribe to, or none at all, our challenge is to turn what we know into righteous action. We need to walk towards the light of truth with no fear. I'll say that one more time, with no fear. And keep walking until we have generational transformation for change for the American freedmen. Thank you so very much for joining us. Please like and share and invite others to join us every other Thursday at 7 p.m. And our next broadcast will be June 9th. Stay tuned, family. Check social media. We are looking forward to bringing some heavy hitters to this panel and conversation, and you will not be disappointed. Have a good night.
Thank you. Wow.
Hey,